generally in our Western upbringings, our understanding of knowledge is that through your endeavor, through your pursuit, you can rise to the top of your class, rise to the top of the corporate ladder, whatever it may be. The idea is you pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you do the work. But traditional wisdom is quite different from that. Traditional wisdom is based on the concept of being willing to humble oneself before teachers who are more experienced and more realized and more advanced than you in any particular tradition. And actually, this is quite commonsensical. Anyone who's participated in athletic sports, anyone who's gone to a university, you know that if you want to be successful in a class, your success is based on your willingness to be a good student in relationship to your teacher. Only then can wisdom open up. So this concept is actually very scientific, how to open the heart of a teacher in order to receive their wisdom. And one of the ways we do that is by recognizing anything which we've gained prior to sharing, we recognize where it's coming from. So I'm going to recite some mantras, some prayers, which are offering respect to those teachers. And by doing so, it allows me to act in such a way which is transparent. I'm not here to present my own ideas. If you look on the altar here, you see we have A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada, who actually came to this great city of New York in 1965 by himself on a cargo ship. And he came to bring the teachings of, you'll see below him, this long lineage of teachers. This is known as parampara. And his success and the reason why this temple exists is because he said, I never tried to change the message which the previous teachers presented. And so I'm a student of one of his students. So in that same spirit, to just represent the message, not try to obstruct. Just like if you have a pipe, if there's some type of hair or something in it, it gets clogged. But when it's clear, the water goes through. So in the same way, without clogging the pipe of knowledge with my false ego, I'll just try to allow the knowledge to descend. And when we hear that knowledge coming through that lineage, it enters into our heart and it can actually create a change remarkably and free us from unwanted qualities such as lust, anger, greed. When we hear that knowledge, we contemplate it, we try to apply it, and we simultaneously pray for the strength to integrate it into our life and fully realize it. So without further ado, I'll offer just a few short prayers. I ask everyone, to simply hear them with attention and an open heart and open mind, as these are sacred vibrations which have been passed down through generations, and they carry immense potency when we simply hear them. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunminitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svam Padantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschyacha Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So tonight's topic is about Tapa, which translates to the English word austerity. Does anyone know what austerity means? It's not a word we hear a lot growing up in America, because generally American culture, Western culture, is the antithesis to austerity. American culture and Western culture in general, the functionality of it, the basis of it, is to maximize comfort for the material body and the material mind as much as possible. That's why you'll see there's a gadget and gizmo for practically every part of our physical body. Something for our hair, something for our teeth, something for our skin, something for our feet. There's some way to try to maximize the comfort of this body. And it's interesting because the more and more we try to maximize the comfort of our body, the more and more we actually feel dissatisfied internally. On an internal level, we could be surrounded by beautiful home, beautiful cars, comfortable couch, sleep number bed. We could have a beautiful spouse. We could have beautiful children. We could everything which you need to do in order to maximize your comfort. You could check off every box. And you'll find that the more you check off those boxes, trying to maximize comfort, the more and more we drift away from actually feeling internally satisfied, internally happy. So there's a text called the Srimad Bhagavatam which says, Nunam pramarto kurute vikarma, it indriya priyatayapnoti, tat sadhu manye paratasvatova, ashad api kleshas to ashadeha. That the great sages of ancient India, they say, this endeavor to simply work hard all day and all night, to build great cities, to build great civilizations, all to make the body comfortable, all to make the mind feel like it's achieved something on the external plane. The ancient wisdom texts of India explain that all of this is pramada, madness. It's completely insane. And why is it insane? Because asadapi kleshas ta ashadeha. Because these sages of India have indicated through analysis of the circumstances of the world that this body is inherently uncomfortable. This body is inherently unnatural. And the nature of it, just like water has a nature, what is the nature of water? It's wet, right? Fire is hot, sugar is sweet, everything has a particular nature about it. What is the nature of this body? The nature of this body is asad api kleshas ta ashadeha. It's temporary and it's full of misery. Why is it full of misery? Because it's subjected to birth I just had a friend, my best friend growing up in Portland, Oregon. He sent me a message last week and he told me that I just had a son. I said, congratulations. How did the birth process go? He said, the hardest experience of my entire life, giving birth to his son. The hardest experience he's ever had. And he wasn't giving birth to the child. His wife is giving birth to the child. What to speak of the circumstance which a woman goes through. If a man is feeling anxiety, what to speak of the physical pain a woman has to experience. They were trying to do a home birth, actually. It went wrong, so they had to rush to the emergency room and do a C-section. And he said that she was in so much anxiety, and that put him in so much anxiety, and it was the hardest experience which they've ever had to go through in either of their lives. And they're practically my age, 30, 32, 34, like that. It's subjected to birth. It's subjected to old age. Now, I haven't been old, but I have observed in the lives of those who become old. It's a very frustrating circumstance because you still have ambitions like a 25-year-old, but you have the physical ability of what your body is. So you're limited in order to fulfill the desires which you want to fulfill. And then disease, anyone who's fallen sick, anyone who's had a life-threatening illness, they know it's full of misery. And then ultimately we have the final exam, which is death. There's a concept in psychology called mortality salience, which functions on the basis of this idea that as human beings, our intelligence is developed enough to realize that we're mortal, but simultaneously we're grappling with the fact that we don't want to be mortal. So psychologists opine that all of society is organized, modern society is organized in order to avoid the fact that the body is temporary and that it's going to die at some point or another. It's going to stop functioning. So this is the reality of life, which unfortunately in Western civilization, we conveniently cover with makeup, with social media, with religion, with so many ideas and concepts in order to avoid the fact that we, on the physical plane of the body, are temporary. And that this body is nothing more than a combination of earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Now, the wisdom texts of India, they explain that as long as one exists on this plane of the body, maximizing comfort for the body, to the degree one is over-endeavoring in order to create comforts which surround themselves, to that degree their internal vision becomes covered. So what is that internal vision? The Bhagavad Gita explains that who we are actually is not this physical body. Who we are is something much more than this physical body. And we are consciousness. We are eternal particles of consciousness which have an eternal relationship with supreme consciousness. And our nature is full of knowledge and full of bliss and full of eternality. So the qualities of the body and the qualities of who we are as consciousness are categorically different. So for us as consciousness to try to find happiness on the level of the body is insane. It's completely insane to try to maximize comfort and expect happiness. Now, we all need a certain level of facility in order to keep us together, to keep us peaceful. But our life should not be organized primarily on the comfort of the body. Our life has to be organized primarily on who we are as a particle of consciousness. It's just like if you have a bird in a bird cage. If you have a bird in a bird cage and you spend all your time cleaning the cage of that bird, but you never take time to actually feed the bird itself, what will happen to the bird? It will die. So who we are as a soul is like that bird, and the body is like the bird cage. And unfortunately, modern society has been designed to trick us into believing that the purpose of our life is to utilize all of our energy, all of our time in simply polishing a bird cage, while losing ourselves spiritually. And what is the cause of this? Being inherently particles of consciousness falsely identified with the material body. There's a reaction which the universe sends us in order to jolt us out of that. And that reaction is anxiety, stress, depression, incongruencies in relationships, incongruencies at the office, incongruencies within the world. All of these things are there to show us you are inherently different from this body which you currently possess, and you're capable of achieving so much more. So what is the access point to let us realize ourselves as consciousness? What gives us the entry point in order to go beyond this falsely prioritized civilization? That is what austerity is. Austerity is accepting the fact that my main priority in life is to organize my time and energy towards realizing myself on the plane of consciousness. That I can live a simple life, keep body and soul together, as they say, but the majority of my energy needs to be invested into cultivating awareness of who I am on the plane of consciousness. So this is what's known as tapodivyam, divine austerity. And there's different ways in which these austerities can be practiced. Some people in India, they will surround themselves with fire and with the sun beating over their head. Some people will submerge themselves in water for long periods of time. Some people will lay on nails. Some people will only walk around with a loincloth on. But actually, all of these austerities are not recommended because they unnecessarily torture the body. The austerities which are recommended and which are considered to be the most effective are, first, one should be willing to receive transcendental sound vibration. One should be willing to come into a space like this, sit, hear, reflect, and try to apply. It's not that you need to change your life, that you need to move to the Himalayas, that you need to become a monk, that you need to do a complete 180. Spiritual life is compared to the blossoming of a flower. If the flower is still in a budding stage, to prematurely pick it will only stunt the growth of that flower. So there is a process by which we can grow in spiritual life. There's a lifestyle by which we can grow in spiritual life. And that lifestyle is what is known as tapasya, or austerity. So the principles of that lifestyle is, first, one should be willing to hear transcendental vibration. That means kirtan. That also means hearing from someone who is on the path, someone who is practicing austerity. Because the sound vibration which we take in will determine the quality of our consciousness. If you don't like the lifestyle you're being subjected to, then change the subject. If you're not feeling content, then change your content. So the content which we take in is the knowledge which we take in. We can either watch Netflix, Hulu, whatever the options are nowadays. We can take that information in, but that will only perpetuate our identification with the body. Or we can hear knowledge which may initially feel very cutting. It may initially feel very, very harsh. But it's just like if you go to a doctor and you have some type of sickness. Has anyone ever gotten Ayurvedic treatment here? Anyone? You've gotten Ayurvedic treatment before? Have you done Panchakarma? No? Okay. Have you gotten Panchakarma before? Panchakarma is a very intense process. And during Panchakarma, initially you have to go through like a purgatory state. And it's very, very painful. But at the end, you feel very relieved and you feel like completely fresh. So in the same way, initially when we come in contact with spiritual knowledge, it may feel very cutting. It may feel very harsh. It may feel almost completely absurd. But if we want to make progress on the path of self-realization, we have to be willing to hear that harsh message that we're not the body. We have to be willing to accept that the comforts of this body are not what's going to really give me happiness. So this is the first step. Accept transcendental vibration from someone who is qualified to give that wisdom, who is practicing a life of austerity, and they're able to transmit that information unobstructedly. First, offer yourself to that sound vibration and simply hear. Simply hear, contemplate, and be willing to humble yourself in the midst of that knowledge. Then there's regulative principles of freedom. These regulative principles of freedom are characterized by that there are certain habits and certain propensities which we could, certain habits and certain lifestyle choices which we could adopt and accept as normal. But in the midst of accepting those things as normal, we actually perpetuate our bodily entanglement. So there's things which we should do and there's things which we should not do. One of which is we should learn to restrain ourselves from intoxication. Intoxication like drinking, smoking, taking coffee even. All of these things unnecessarily agitate our bodily conception of life. And when the bodily conception of life becomes agitated, we begin to move towards acting on that plane rather than acting according to our higher nature as consciousness. Then there is, one should refrain from eating meat. One should refrain from taking fish or eggs. Because when one unnecessarily eats food by which the life of that living entity, whose sentient awareness is quite developed, when their life is taken for the sake of your satisfaction of the tongue, your consciousness becomes molded by the fear, the anxiety, and the the turmoil which they went through in order for you to have that. You have to take on the karma of that living entity. And it affects the mind in very subtle ways. It makes us prone to anger. It makes us prone to harsh speech. It makes us prone to being lusty, to unnecessarily trying to exploit others. And then there's gambling. And gambling is just basically wasting money for the sake of wasting it. Taking a risk, and this intensifies greed. So we see that intoxication, it intensifies a bodily conception of life by obscuring our perception of the world. Eating meat obscures our conception of life by exposing us to energy which is inherently full of fear and anxiety. And gambling, the very nature of it intensifies greed. Now the final one is one should refrain from promiscuous sexual activity. And this is because sexual energy is extremely powerful. You can understand how powerful sexual energy is on the basis of the fact that it's able to produce life. It's able to produce children. And when sexual energy is misused simply for the sake of enjoyment, rather than within the sanctity of marriage producing children who are spiritually developed, and the purpose of producing children was to produce spiritually developed offspring. When that energy is misused, just as how powerful it is, has the ability to create, it has just as much power to destroy. So you see that in modern society, due to the misuse of sexual energy, there's so many things going on which are completely disturbing to people. Pedophilia, rape, unwanted children. So many horrible things take place due to misused sexual energy. So it increases lust, and that increase of lust intensifies our bodily conception more than anything else, because the pleasure which comes out of sexual energy is the most intense pleasure one can experience on the material plane. So much so that despite the fact that raising a family is difficult, having children is difficult, one is still willing to undergo that austerity, that pain, that difficulty of raising the family, the sacrifice which goes into it, for the sake of that pleasure. Such an intense pleasure. So when we withhold ourselves from these four activities while simultaneously taking in spiritual sound vibration, then what you'll find is that just as people in this world, they work extremely hard in order to achieve those comforts, but that work is ultimately defeated because all those comforts are taken away at the disappearance of the body. When one is willing to accept this voluntary restraint, this voluntary austerity, this voluntary momentary inconvenience on the bodily plane, then what you'll find is what you gain is realization of who you are on the spiritual platform. And that gain is so valuable that even if one still feels a push for the bodily demands, the taste which one experiences on the spiritual plane from taking in transcendental sound vibration and allowing that vibration to transform the heart is so pleasurable that one is able to be uninterested in it. One is able to be completely detached from it. It's just like cats they have a particular disposition towards cat food. They can eat raw meat and like that's uncooked, and they feel completely joyful about it. But as human beings, our senses function in a different way. If we see it, we feel repulsed. And it's because we're experiencing a greater taste with the fruits and vegetables which are available in the human form of life. So in the same way, these four things, when we abstain from them, when we taste spiritual satisfaction, we'll look upon them and we'll say, actually, I'm not so interested. The taste which I am gaining from the transcendental vibration, the taste which I'm gaining from chanting, from associating, from taking food which has been offered to Krishna with love and devotion, the experience which is elevating my consciousness due to this lifestyle of tapa, of austerity, is so nourishing that I'm uninterested in the pleasures of this world. Because I'm gaining a greater pleasure from the mood of service which is being cultivated, having taken in transcendental vibration, allowing it to transform me, and simultaneously restraining and keeping myself aloof from these degradatory activities, these degrading activities. And the most important austerity for the time we live in is learning to be humble. Learning to be as humble as a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, taking no respect for ourselves and offering all respect to others. In the time which we live in, where being proud, being the top, and owning it and trying to be the man is glorified and appreciated throughout society, to be humble in such a circumstance is the greatest victory, actually. So the greatest austerity which we can cultivate is being willing to be humble. So by taking in vibration, spiritual vibration, by restraining from these four things, and simultaneously willing to be humble. And being humble means willing to learn from others who are more qualified than myself. Willing to tolerate inconveniences which come along with applying that knowledge. Offering respect to everyone, no matter how they treat me, and expecting no respect for myself. This is the greatest austerity for the time which we live in. And when you do this, you'll be able to be in contact with transcendental vibration at all times, in all places, and gain the greatest satisfaction due to that constant contact with transcendental vibration. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we can open it up for discussion. Spiritual discourses are not necessarily meant to be one-sided. Actually, they're the most fruitful and the most exciting when they're two-sided. So I encourage everyone to please be open with your experience. Please reflect on what was spoken. Please ask questions on things which you doubt. Please feel free to challenge concepts. It's a space which is meant to teach us how to think rather than what to think. So I encourage everyone to please be open to thoughtful discussion and don't be shy. And generally I've noticed speaking here and there and everywhere, the hardest part is when the first person who speaks. Once one person speaks, the whole room starts speaking. So I encourage someone just jump in the pool and just go for it.
So yesterday we have an event called Soul Talks, very similar to this event at the Bhakti Center. And we had Sri Prahlad, who was our speaker, and he was talking about the happiness formula. And he talked about psychology, many things, many overlapping themes. One of the things he was discussing is that certain psychologists said that with their happiness study, they figured out that 50% is based on the personality, 40% the mindset, and then 10% is the circumstance. And that's what you're trying to do, is change our circumstance, but it's like, it's only 10%. And the personality is also like quite fixed also. Mm-hmm. It's really the mindset is where you have leeway to actually change your experience in this world. And then he also talked about something called hedonic adaptation, and it means that everything sort of levels off. Like if you win the lottery, then it eventually your level of material happiness will just level off, and you'll be, if they were to do an extensive interview and review, how are you feeling? Are you feeling more happy? This or that? It's not going to be. If you get in a serious car accident and you lose your legs, and they come back a year later, oh, how are you doing? How happy are you? What's your life like? It's going to be the bad or the good. It's just going to level off. All the different circumstances are not going to really change your experience of happiness. That's just one thing I wanted to share from yesterday's talk.
Oh, thank you.
What is that? You the treatment again? It's
Pancha karma.
Karma. Thank you.
Anyone?
Yeah. So basically, my question is like, you've mentioned that our kind of goal is to be humble, and I was trying to like practice it, embody it in my life according to my religion, Islam. But so many times I felt like put it down, just humiliated, and it doesn't even satisfy my soul, like my eternal consciousness or heart, everything. And so I want to just like to realize, just clarify this moment, how to be humble and like maybe that's really kind of famous in nowadays about the self boundaries, like how to keep it, and like in the same time to be like humble but know these boundaries and be not so much humiliated by someone.
Yeah, being humble doesn't mean being a doormat. Being humble means willing to uphold the principles which you've received from your mentors and teachers in any and all circumstances. That's actually the real meaning of humility. And being willing to admit that I'm insignificant in the midst of my teachers and those who I've learned from. So setting boundaries, it really what happens is when we are in a culture which humility is seen as vulnerability, that's when it becomes perceived as a weakness. But actually, even in corporate offices, I've seen, and also in management, sometimes I have management services I have to do, just helping people who exist within a global international movement. I found that many times in tough management circumstances, being humble is actually a strength. And you can actually capture people's hearts through your humility. But humility doesn't mean just letting everyone walk over you. Humility means being willing to stand your ground and uphold your principles, which help you realize yourself as a particle of consciousness eternally related to God, in circumstances where it may be extremely difficult to. That's actual humility, and that's actual empowerment. That's divine empowerment. When we're able to uphold our principles in circumstances which otherwise may be very difficult to do so. For instance, existing in the world which we live in and being dedicated to following those 4 principles which I mentioned to you, and being willing to show up regularly for our spiritual practices, show up regularly to offer ourselves to the practice, even when it may be difficult, even when our mind may not fully be into it. We still show up and we still execute our principles because this is what we've learned from our teachers. And I'm uncompromising in upholding those principles. That's actual humility. It's not just to be walked over by everyone, but it's to be willing to remember the example and the teachings of our teachers in any and all circumstances.
And it also means like to don't respond to someone who is trying to yell or put you down, right? Like
It can mean that. Sometimes humility may mean putting someone in their place. Sometimes being humble may mean saying this is not right and something needs to be said about it. It could mean that sometimes. It's not that humility is like one thing, that it's stereotyped. Humility is very dynamic when you're trying to uphold your principles in circumstances. There may be times where people may try to impose upon you a lifestyle which goes against the principles which you stand for. And if you give in to their allurements in the name of being humble, that's not humble. It's being foolish. But to say this is not right, I'm not going to do it, that's being humble. Because you understand that your life is being guided by something higher than that temporary temptation. Yes?
In the same subject, humbleness. Last Sunday, I left here, same Darshan talk, around 9:30, 10 o'clock I would say, because after here I went upstairs for the kirtan. And I was picking up the past train back to New Jersey. And it was packed. I arrived at last minute, so everybody's already in the train sitting down. So I'm aiming towards the last wagon because sometimes there is a spot open. As I get there, everybody's sitting down except one spot, which there is this guy with his bike in front of him, with like a Jamaican or like a hat with the colorful Jamaican colors, like, and like 10 o'clock at night with sunglasses on, and Fred is sitting down, and next to a seat it was his backpack. With a, and nobody ever asked to remove the backpack. And I looked at that situation and said, let me see if I can, I'm heavy with my backpack, 10 o'clock at night. I said, excuse me, is this your backpack? Can I sit down? He said, no, you're not gonna sit down. This is my backpack. And I said, and everybody's just like looking around it. And I was like, I know, you must have a very tough day. I understand, but I'm carrying this bag and I'm exhausted too. Can I sit down, please? Can you move this bag? And he insisted, no, sit down. And then I went to another round, because after you leave this place here, so you pick up so many ideas too that I must apply what I learned. So then I went over and said, I do know that you have a good heart. It was like, I do know that you have a good heart. So please do a good deed. Take your backpack, let me sit down. And I was almost laughing internally, you know. And everybody's just like, how far this is gonna go. And then, and when I said you have a good heart, then he didn't come back like strongly. He just, then from that point on, he was quiet, quiet, quiet. And I insisted again, you have a good heart. And he didn't move. And it came to a point, and I was still facing almost him. And a person behind me got up from his chair and said, here, you have a place here. I said, okay, thank you. I went over, sat down, put my backpack, a young gentleman. And I finally sat down over there. But after you leave here, be careful if you're gonna face a situation of how far you're gonna stand up, you know what I mean?
Yeah, very good point. While you were speaking, I was thinking that humility also means being sensitive enough to not unnecessarily disturb others' environment for the sake of our own comfort. Yeah. So you didn't start screaming at him, which probably some people may have. You tried to connect with him on who he was as a soul, and he may have not been able to receive it, but someone else could appreciate it, and they made space for you.
But there was a space of shift on him, because he became quiet, quiet, and then I started to say, I know you are great, you can do it, you can have a good heart.
Yes?
I don't know if like it's a valid question related to the talk that we had today, but it's like, if you look at Tapodevyam, it's like sacrificing of pleasures that is like fulfilling our bodily needs. And why is like spirituality always equated with simplicity? Like a person needs to have simple life to be spiritual enough. What if I feel like if I'm a Karam yogi and like I want to make good money, or like I don't know if I'll be successful or not, but if I like working and if I have a luxurious life and still I could be spiritual at the same time, like why can't they both go?
Because your wealth and your comfort is already written in the stars. You can't control it.
But I can like put in the effort.
It doesn't matter. Your material comfort and satisfaction is written in the stars. If
that's
you're,
a karma yogi. It's like he works, but he's unattached to the result.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't care if I'll be successful
So-
or not. So
my point is that you can work as hard as you want, but the amount you get is already written in the stars. The perfection of that activity is not what you get out of it, but what you do with whatever comes out of it. So like he was saying, you can work as hard as you like in a particular field of activity, But simplicity is emphasized because as soon as you try to take proprietorship over the result of your activity, you have to deal with the consequences of that. So simplicity in spiritual life is essential. There's many, 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 even people who are not necessarily connected with the spiritual path, they will make a lot of money, but they choose to live simply. And they put their money in other bank accounts, they put their money in nonprofits. Because as soon as you take proprietorship over all of that money, you have the government on your case, you have the public on your case, you have family on your case, you have everyone on your case to want to get a piece of it. So actually you won't be able to enjoy so much of it in the end. But if you preemptively give, then the Bhagavad Gita explains that you'll live like a lotus. Whatever comes into your possession and you say, this is for you, Krishna. This is for you. Everything which I'm doing, any result which I get, it's all for you. And when you do that, your consciousness will be untouched by the circumstances of this world, just as a lotus, although it's living in the murky water, which is very muddy and dirty, it's untouched by the filth of that water. So in the same way, you can work in this world, that's fine, but understanding the value of simplicity is essential in order for us to be untouched by the results of the work which we have to do. Everyone has to work in different capacities. But if you try to unnecessarily take proprietorship over the results of those activities, then you'll have to deal with the reaction within your subtle body, and then the reactions will also manifest on a physical level in due course of time.
You have the verse in Ishopanishad, which is Ishavasham Jagat Sarvam, that, as you said, it's in the stars. So basically, somebody will work 40 hours, another person will work 40 hours. This person will get, $1,000. This person will get $100,000 for the same amount of effort, because it's their karma. They get their karmic reaction of their past good or past negative activities. They get a certain result with the same endeavor. And so Arjuna, who is the inquirer of the Bhagavad Gita, he's more than the 1%. He's extremely wealthy. And he says, I want to give up everything, and I want to become a monk and just be spiritual. And Krishna says, no, you got to do what you're doing, but you have to do everything mad artam apikarmani. You have to do everything for my sake. You have to do everything for a spiritual sake, and therefore you become like the lotus, you become untouched. And so, not that you are asked to move away from what would be your life's natural situation, but you have the trust and the faith that if I just do my hard work, I'm going to get whatever I deserve. Actually, that's the mood of the Brahmana, the Vaishya, the Kshatriya. They have this trust that whatever, if I just do my what's given to me, if I do that, whatever I deserve will come. That's why gambling is kind of it's a dishonest attempt to get money that is not due to you. It's like I'm just going to work, and if immense wealth comes my way, it will come. And like for example, in America they say, like, I want to wait till I have kids so I have wealth, but the kids have their own money coming with them. They have their own karma, and like the kids come, and then all of a sudden, like there's like a huge raise in the job, and then somebody else gets some extra. They bring their own income. Like actually, Prabhupada, he was amazed when he heard the wealthy Americans were like, we want to wait, and he's like, we're in Calcutta, like, and there's no like poor woman there would think, let me wait, let me save up some money before I have a kid. It's like, no, it's all going to work out. They're going to come with their own karmic bank accounts. It's all going to be taken care of. And so yeah, you do your work, and then but you have it for this mad artam. It's for his sake. And sarva karma palatyagam. I'm not attached to the fruits. I just do what I'm supposed to do, and whatever comes, I'll offer it as an offering. And so you can be a Bill Gates, but do it for the divine. Do it for Krishna. And also simplicity means not being duplicitous. That's another meaning. Arjavam. It's a very straightforward, not a two-faced kind of personality. That's another meaning of the word simplicity. The English translation. It's not always fitting, but it means non-duplicitous. Straightforward.
Anyone else?
So is like destiny more powerful than karma itself?
They're both.
Destiny, karma, the same thing.
But the karma is something that we do, but destiny is something that's from like previous bank balance that we have of like spiritual karma that we collected.
They're interrelated to each other. Yeah.
So Arjun was like destined to do what he was doing, or like
He was destined to be.
He was destined to be successful. Yeah.
Krishna said this. It's already going to happen. You can choose to be a part of it. It's like, Any other questions?
One thing which is in your control, although you can't control how much money you're going to make or how much comfort you're going to have, you can control the choices that you make for making progress beyond the identification with the body. That's the only thing which is actually in our control, is how seriously we want to take our spiritual advancement. There's something which is known as a Vishnu Graha, that as soon as someone takes to spiritual life seriously, there's a planet which enters into their astrological chart, which begins to influence all the other planets within that chart. So we can take spiritual life as seriously as we want. We may not be able to control how much money we have. We may not be able to control how comfortable we'll be. We may not be able to control how many children we have. We may not be able to control practically anything in this world. But we can control is how seriously we want to take the process of spiritual advancement. So that's why all wisdom texts emphasize live a simple life. Don't overcomplicate things, over-endeavor for things which are not written out for you. Everything will come of its own accord if you perform your prescribed duty, whatever it may be, whatever type of lifestyle you're supposed to have in order to keep body and soul together. And the definition of that is different from everyone. Like I live as a monk in a temple, so I just need 6 feet to lay down, some books to read, and someone, ringing the bell for me to take prasadam every day and some service to do. But if someone has a family, they can't live like that. They have to have a house, they have to have a car, they have to have so many facilities in order to keep the family together. So what each person needs is different according to their particular karmic circumstance, according to their particular circumstance. But the principle for any of the circumstances of life is we should try to minimize unnecessary material facilities which complicate circumstances. Because as soon as things start to get complicated on a material level, that's when we become entanglement. That's when we become entangled in hopes that we can make this circumstance last. And that's when we get exposed to anxiety. That's when we get exposed to stress. That's when we get exposed to so many different mental obstacles internally. Yeah. So if it's meant for you to be rich and famous, then just use it for Krishna. But if not, be satisfied. It's said that one can become detached from having wealth by seeing the complications which come from having it. It's very difficult to be famous. It's very difficult to be rich. I think
all the kids nowadays, they all want to be famous.
I think Notorious B.I.G. said, "More money, more problems." So there's some truth in that, actually. More money that comes in, more problems. More fame that comes in, more problems. So to live a humble, simple life and just focus on spiritual progress, and do whatever prescribed duty you're supposed to do, utilize it for Krishna, and be happy, be peaceful. We're just passing through this place anyways. Everything is temporary. And all that money can be taken away at any moment. But if we preemptively give it, then it can be utilized for our elevation.